I'm going to use a piano because when it comes to understanding music theory, the piano is really great because it just lays everything out in a really nice visual way. So no matter what instrument you play, whether it's the bass guitar, bagpipes, ukulele, piccolo, tin whistle, doesn't matter. The piano is still a great place for you to learn music theory concepts. We have 12 different pitches in Western music, and they sound like this. We can go up or down in pitch, and when we're moving up in pitch, the notes get higher sounding. For instance, if I start here, I'm getting higher, right? That's a lower note, and that's a higher note. And we can go down in pitch, and the notes get lower. Now, the distance between each of these 12 pitches that I just played is called a half step. It's also called a semitone. And a half step, or semitone, is the smallest distance we can move between two notes in Western music. For instance, from here to here, that's a half step. And from here to here, that's a half step. From here to here, that's a half step. And from here to here, it's a half step. And so forth. Half step, half step, half step, half step. So each little distance is called a half step. Now, when I play all 12 pitches moving up in half steps, that is called the chromatic scale. Now, what exactly is a scale? A scale is just a series of notes played in a certain order. And in music, we play and analyze scales for many reasons, but we'll get more into those later. So the chromatic scale is just a scale where each note is one half step higher than the one before it. So we're just moving up in half steps. If I played every single note on the keyboard, both white and black notes, then I would be moving up in half steps. And I'm also playing the chromatic scale. Now, when I move to the right on the piano, I'm moving up the scale because the notes are getting higher in pitch. We could also call that a chromatic scale ascending. And if I move to the left on the piano, I'm moving down the scale because the notes are getting lower. And we could say that we are descending when we're moving down. Am I getting higher or lower? I'm getting higher. So that is a chromatic scale ascending. And if I go to the left like this, am I getting lower or higher? I'm getting lower, so we would say that's a chromatic scale descending. Now, along with half steps, we also have something called whole steps. And a whole step is the same distance as two half steps because two halves make a whole. So for instance, from here to here is a whole step because that's two half steps. Because see, from here to here, that's a half step. And then from here to here, that's a half step. So that's two half steps. So from here to here is a whole step. What about from here to here? Is that a half step or a whole step? That's a whole step, right? Because this is a half step and that's a half step. So from here to here, we have a whole step. Now, what about from here to here? Is that a half step or a whole step? That is a half step, right? Because there's no note in between them, see? So just one half step. What about from here to here? What is that? This one's tricky. This is neither one half step or one whole step, but this is three half steps. See? 1, 2, 3 half steps. Or you could say a whole step plus a half step, but it's probably a little easier to just say 3 half steps. Now, if you play a stringed instrument like the ukulele or guitar, a half step is the same distance as just one fret. So for instance, if I go from here to here, that's a half step. From here to here, that's another half step. Another half step, another half step. I can go down in half steps as well. And then 2 halves make a whole. So from here to here, that's a whole step, see? Because it's 2 half steps. From here to here, that's a whole step. From here to here, that's a whole step. And it's the same for no matter what string I'm on. From here to here, that's a whole step. From here to here, that's a half step. So on a stringed instrument, 1 fret equals 1 half step. Now, what do we call these 12 pitches? Well, they can go by different names. I know that might seem confusing, but don't worry, you're going to get used to it. And after time, it seems normal, I promise. First, let's look at the names of the white keys on the piano. So to name these notes, we're going to use the alphabet. But we're going to only go up to the letter G. So this is a shortened alphabet we use, and it's just A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then it repeats over again, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And this is what we call the musical alphabet. So if I were going to play just the white keys on the piano, the names of the notes would be A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then after G, we just go back to A again. A, B, C, and it just keeps repeating and repeating forever in both directions. Now, the black keys on the piano go by two different names each. They have a sharp name and a flat name. So first let's talk about what it means to sharpen or flatten a note, okay? So in music, if we sharpen a note, we simply move the pitch up a half step. So if I said, play me the note A sharp, you could find the note A, right here is A, and then you could just move up a half step from A to find A sharp, because see how this is one half step higher than A? So to sharpen something just means to make it higher in pitch by a half step. Now, to flatten a note just means we lower it a half step in pitch. So if I said, hey, play me the note A flat, you could just find the note A, and then if I were to lower the pitch by a half step, I just move here. Now I'm playing the note A flat. So this is why these black keys have two different names, because look, this note right here, it's between the notes G and A, right? So it could be called A flat, right? Because it's a half step lower than A, but it could also be called G sharp, because here's G, and it's a half step higher than G. So let's go over the names of the 5 different black keys on the piano, because there are only 5 of them, just this one, this one, this one, this one. 5, right? So this one is C sharp or D flat, C because it's between the notes C and D. It's a little bit higher than C, so it could be called C sharp, and it's a little bit lower than D, right? So it could also be D flat. Now this one is called D sharp or E flat, because look, it's a half step higher than D, right? Here's D, D sharp. And it's a half step lower than E, right? Here's E, half step lower, it becomes E flat. So D sharp or E flat. This one right here is either F sharp or G flat, because it's between the notes F and G, right? It's a little bit higher than F by a half step, so it's F sharp. It's also a little bit lower than G, therefore it's G flat. And this is the one we did earlier. It's either G sharp or A flat, because it's between the notes G and A. And last but not least, we have this note, which can either be called A sharp or B flat, because it's between the notes A and B. It's a half step higher than A, therefore it's A sharp, and it's a half step lower than B, therefore it's B flat. Now, when we have a single pitch with 2 different note names, those 2 notes are called enharmonic equivalents. So the notes A sharp and B flat are enharmonic equivalents, because see, they sound exactly the same, right? They're the exact same pitch. I'm playing the same physical note in space, right? But it goes by 2 different names, A sharp and B flat. So those are enharmonic equivalents. And this is a very important concept to understand in music. Now, if you look on the piano, you can see there are sets of 3 black keys and 2 black keys, right? It's groups of 3 and 2. And it just alternates like that. And that's because we have, there are 2 spots on the piano where you can really clearly see that there's no black key between 2 white notes, okay? So what are those 2 spots? It's this spot right here, and then this spot right here. So these are the notes B and C. So between B and C, there's no black key. And then also between E and F, there's no black key as well. Now, we can sharpen or flatten any note. We can even sharpen or flatten one of those notes that doesn't have a black key next to it. For instance, I could sharpen this note B right here, right? Here's the note B, and if I sharpen it, if I said, well, okay, I want to have a B sharp, well, what would the note B sharp be? So I said when we sharpen something, it moves up a half step, right? So I'm just going to move up to the right, 1 half step, and here, this is B sharp, okay? So this note could be called B sharp. It also could be called C, but C and B sharp are enharmonic equivalents, and there might be some cases where it would actually be correct to call it B sharp instead of C, okay? What about the note F flat? Okay, so where's F? Here's F, and if I were to flatten the note, I lower it by a half step, right? So I go here, and this note right here is an F flat. So F flat, and what else could this note be called? It could also be called E. So F flat and E are, do you remember what that vocabulary term was that I told you earlier? It's a quick little quiz. So F flat and E are enharmonic equivalents. So enharmonic equivalent is just 2 notes that have the exact same pitch. See how this is E and then F flat? They're 2 notes, different names that have the exact same pitch, so they sound exactly the same. Enharmonic equivalent, F flat, and E. I think a common misconception people have when they're first learning about music is that they somehow think these black keys are not as important as the white keys, maybe because they have sharps and flats in their names, but they are equally as important as any of the white keys, okay? And sometimes people seem almost nonchalant about forgetting to say the sharp or flat after a note name. Sometimes when I teach really beginner students who have never had any music training before, they might accidentally call a note E instead of E flat. But E and E flat are two completely different notes, right? This is E, and that's E flat. And you really need to treat them as completely different notes. And not only are they different notes, but they're both equally important notes. Of all the 12 of our pitches, all 12 of them are equally important. And they're all exactly 1/2 step apart from the other notes next to them. So don't let the fact that some of them have sharps and flats in their names make you think that they're somehow less important. They're all 1/2 step apart from each other, and all 12 notes are equally important. Now, the last thing I want to talk about in this video is what is the difference between a note and a chord, okay? So a note is just a single pitch that gets played. So if I took my finger and I just pressed the piano down on just one key, I would be playing a note because I'm just hearing one sound of pitch, right? It's just one note. Now, if I play more than one note at the same time, now I'm technically playing a chord, okay? I think technically a chord has to have 3 notes in it to be considered a chord, but sometimes people play just 2 notes together and it's also considered a chord, so don't worry about that too much. All you really need to know is that when you play more than one note at once, you're playing a chord. So for instance, if I took 3 of my fingers and I played 3 different notes or pitches simultaneously, like this, I would be playing a chord. Now what if I'm playing a stringed instrument like a guitar or ukulele? So if I were to play just one string, like this, am I playing a note or a chord? I'm playing a note, right? Because this string is just making the sound for one pitch, right? Because I've tuned this string to be the pitch A, right? So whenever I pluck this string, I'm hearing the pitch A. Therefore, it's a note because it's just one pitch. Now, if I were to strum across all 4 of my strings, now I'm playing a chord, and I'm not playing a note because I'm playing 4 different notes at the same time. I'm playing the note G, C, E, and A. Those are the 4 notes that I've tuned my strings to, but when I play G, C, E, and A together, I'm playing a chord, and that chord could be called either G6 or A minor 7. I could also just play these 3 strings. So I left out this string right here. I'm playing a chord, right? Because I'm playing 3 different notes at the same time still. So that's really all there is to it. When you're playing one string, you're playing individual notes, and when you're playing 3 strings or more than one string at the same time with different notes, then you're playing a chord. That is all for today. I hope you enjoyed this Intro to Music Theory video. I want to make some more introductory music theory videos, and when I do, I will post those in links in the description below. If you're new to my channel, hello and welcome. I post 1 video a week, and if you haven't already subscribed, I would love to have you here as a subscriber. Also, don't forget to turn on that bell notification so you can know when I post a new video. I also have a Patreon where I share tons of different materials such as quizzes and worksheets, and I give the answer sheets as well. Song charts with the chords, the lyrics, the chord diagrams, all that fun stuff. That can all be found on my Patreon page. Hopefully you found this video helpful. If you have other topics in music theory that you'd like me to break down in a simple way, let me know and in the comments below, and I will do my best to make a video about that. As I said, I want to make a series of sort of super introductory topics and eventually put them all in a playlist together. So yeah, if you have any other suggestions, let me know in the comments below, or if you want to say hey, just say hey as well. That is it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your day or night, and I will see you next week.